I used to think adulthood would fix things automatically. That once I had my own place, my own income, my own life, the old dynamics would lose their grip through sheer irrelevance. I didn't expect love exactly, but I expected neutrality. A truce. The gathering was supposed to be safe. A cousin's engagement, rented hall, long tables with white cloths already stained by tea rings. My parents had arrived early, of course. They always did, as if punctuality itself were a claim to moral authority. My sister came late, glowing, breathless, already apologizing in the way that never really meant sorry. I noticed, the moment I sat down, that no one asked about my work. My mother asked if I was still alone. My father asked whether the building I lived in had raised its maintenance fees again. Questions that pretended to be interest but were actually accounting. The apartment had been my quiet rebellion. Bought with savings, loans, and years of restraint no one ever applauded. A modest place in a good area, nothing flashy, but solid. Mine. They knew the number, 350,000, because they'd insisted on knowing, back when they still believed everything I had was provisional. The conversation drifted, inevitably, to my sister. She was struggling, they said. Rent was wasted money, her landlord was difficult, marriage was on the horizon maybe, someday if things stabilized. Eyes turned toward me not all at once, but gradually, like a tide rising. My mother said it lightly. You could help her for a few years. You don't need all that space. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even interrupt. I waited for the sentence to finish, then said, I'm not giving my apartment to anyone. Word. Giving seemed to offend them more than refusal, as if the transfer had already been morally approved and I was merely obstructing logistics. My sister laughed too quickly. Wow. Okay. My father leaned back, arms crossed. So you'd rather watch your own sister suffer? There it was. The old equation, her comfort as evidence of my virtue. I'm not watching anything, I said. I'm just not handing over my home. Something in my mother's face hardened. Not anger at first, disappointment, sharpened into something meaner. You've always been like this, she said, calculating, greedy. The word landed harder because it was familiar. I'd worn it since childhood whenever I didn't yield. Greedy for wanting my own room. Greedy for not sharing gifts that were given to me. Greedy for leaving home. Egoist, she added, louder now, aware of the audience. I felt the room tilt. A few relatives looked down. Someone shifted plates. I might have survived that. I have survived worse. But then she stood up, reached across the table, and grabbed the edge of the cake tray, half eaten, soft with cream. It wasn't theatrical. She didn't throw it with force. She tipped it forward, like emptying a drawer. The cake slid down my face, cream in my hair, crumbs on my shirt. A small gasp went around the table. Someone laughed, then stopped. For a moment no one moved. Not even me. I remember thinking how absurdly cold the frosting felt. I stood up slowly, picked up a napkin, wiped my eyes first, then my cheeks. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at anyone. I'm going home, I said. Not as a threat. As a statement of fact. No one tried to stop me. That night, alone in my apartment, I washed my clothes, showered, sat on the edge of my bed. The humiliation replayed itself in fragments, the sound of the tray, the way my sister hadn't defended me, the satisfaction on my father's face that discipline had been restored. I realized something then, with a clarity that surprised me. As long as access remained ambiguous, the pressure would never stop. As long as my independence was treated as temporary, it would always be negotiable. I hadn't wanted to escalate. I had believed silence was dignity. But silence, I understood, had only taught them that my boundaries were flexible. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not to sue, not to threaten, to formalize. Within weeks, everything that had once been understood became explicit. Ownership registered cleanly. A will drafted without assumptions. A trust amended to remove informal expectations I'd been nudged into years earlier. Notices sent, not emotional, not accusatory, just precise. The response was delayed, which told me everything. They needed time to recalibrate. When it came sideways. My mother called, voice tight, asking why things had to be so extreme. My father texted a single line, "You've embarrassed us." I didn't explain. Explanation had always been their opening. The real shift happened later, at another gathering I didn't attend. An envelope arrived addressed to my sister clarifying, courteously, irrevocably, that my assets were not available for familial redistribution. A third party's signature at the bottom, indifferent to feelings. Authority has a way of draining drama from the room. I heard afterward that my sister cried. That my parents were furious not at me, exactly, but at the fact that they could no longer negotiate around me. The narrative had changed, and they hadn't authored it. Months passed. Invitations became formal. Conversations careful. No one joked about my apartment again. I lost something in that process. The illusion that restraint would earn respect. The hope that time alone could rewrite hierarchy. But I gained something quieter. One evening, I stood in my kitchen, watching the city lights flicker on. The space felt different, not warmer, not happier, but settled. Untouchable. They never apologized for the cake. I didn't ask them to. Some losses announce themselves loudly. Others arrive as silence and stay. And in that silence, for the first time, I was not greedy. I was simply free.